well. So he will join the discussion later.
Yeah, very good.
Jadi hari ini teman-teman kita coba cari perspektif lainnya. Mungkin ada yang pernah bertemu dengan Mr. Basil di sini secara online ya. Beliau ini adalah seorang pakar hak asasi manusia di regional Asia. Pernah bekerja untuk beberapa isu hak asasi manusia di Kamboja, kemudian di Hong Kong, Sri Lanka, Korea, dan beberapa negara. Saya sengaja minta waktu beliau untuk ya sekedar bincang-bincang sama kita, tapi nanti akan disampaikan secara bahasa Inggris. Kalau saya akan menerjemahkan, tapi tidak akan saya terjemahkan kata per kata, tapi interpretasi saja. So, Mr. Basil, before we start, I will give you a little bit background of our discussion, yeah. So then the discussion can be sharp and narrow into the topic. So first of all, I will play a short video on the non-judicial process that issued by Mr. Joko Widodo, our president. I will play the let me find the YouTube video first. Wait. This one. Oh, it's not appear in my laptop, yeah. Brother Amal, can you play the video from there? Hello?
Hello?
Namal is there?
Yeah, just a minute. Namal?
I will send the link to him because it is not appear in my laptop. Just very short, and then I will continue with the short PowerPoint to give you a picture of our transitional justice.
Yeah. So I think you can begin with that, and later we can play the video.
Okay.
Namal?
Okay, maybe we start with the PowerPoint first, Mr. Basil.
Yeah.
As I already sent to you in the email that we are focusing on the gross violation of human rights and also past human rights abuses, which still become homework for the transitional governments, transitional democratic government. So the title that's always discussed by the Indonesian people is "Are acknowledgement and apology enough?" Means enough to address the past abuses here. So here is the key human rights issue in Indonesia, impunity. Even though we already passed 20 years political reform in Indonesia, we still dealing with the impunity. The alleged perpetrators remain unpunished. And then defect legal system to prosecute human rights cases. We have law number 26 of 2000 on human rights court, but it's not really work because so far we already the public prosecutor already prosecute 3 human rights cases in the human rights court, but it's not success. And then lack of accountability of human rights protection, absence of adequate remedy. Youth and student activists, which is our audience today, they tend to maybe ignore of human rights policy and cases. But our audience today, which is university student of the University of Bung Karno, they already learned human rights, and we can discuss further later. So
now Namal is available. If you want, you can send the.
Okay, I will finish the slide first.
Okay.
It's only 7 slides. This is our president, Mr. Joko Widodo. He issued the presidential decree last year, number 17, to address gross violation of human rights through non-judicial system. But victims, family of victims, human rights activists are very worried that non-judicial system will replace judicial system or human rights court, because mainly the approach focus on the economic, social, and also non-legal. Yeah, it's mainly focused on the economic, health, and also a social approach. But actually, this is history, yeah, because victims already demand to address the past abuses since former President Soeharto stepped down in 1998. Mr. Joko Widodo, in the end of his period, next year he will finish the period. Mr. Joko Widodo issued a policy on the acknowledgement and public apology for victims and family of victims for past abuses which occurred in Indonesia. And actually, we also have a local truth and reconciliation in Aceh that Mr. Basil 2 years ago already discussed with the local commissioner. Actually, but this is not ideal TRC because only examine local actors. It cannot approach national alleged perpetrators. And this is 12 cases that acknowledged by the governments, start from 1965 massacre, 1989 Talang Sari massacre, enforced disappearances which occurred in 1997, 1998, 1998 Rumah Gedong in Aceh, the May riots, Trisakti Semanggi shooting, tragedy Banyuwangi massacre, Simpang KKA, it is also occurred in Aceh, Wasyor Wamena occurred in Papua, Jambu Kepo in Aceh, Munir's murder. It is also acknowledged by the government as a gross violation of human rights, finally, but the investigation not yet started. And then the Bloody Paniai case, which already brought to the Human Rights Court last year, but the perpetrator finally were released by the panel of judges. This is that I already mentioned before, Mr. Basil. President Joko Widodo issued presidential decree number 17 of 2022 concerning establishment of non-judicial settlement team for serious past human rights abuses, and also the human rights violation settlement that established by Mr. Widodo now is already started, and we are worried that it will delegitimize the role of National Commission on Human Rights. So we are actually still expect that National Commission on Human Rights to continue the investigation and brought the case before the Human Rights Court. So Namal maybe can plan the video short to complement my my explanation. Please, Brother Namal. Sambil menunggu video, tadi saya menjelaskan sedikit, mungkin ya kalau teman-teman ada yang, saya yakin di sini banyak yang bisa berbahasa Inggris, nggak apa-apa ya, nanti saya pas giliran Pak Basil ini saya akan terjemahkan sedikit. Saya juga mengundang narasumber lain, ada Pak Bejo, beliau ini adalah salah satu korban ya, yang peristiwanya diakui oleh Pak Joko Widodo, peristiwa 65, sudah bersama kita juga, nanti akan sedikit sharing. So, how about the video, Mr. Basil? Oh.
Yeah, he's put in there.
Oh, okay.
We welcome President Joko Widodo's acknowledgement and expression of regret for 12 historical incidents of serious human rights violations, including the 1965 to 1966 anti-communist crackdown, the 1982 to 1985 protester shootings, enforced disappearances in 1997 and 1998, and the Wamena incident in Papua in 2003. The President's gesture is a step on the long road to justice for victims and their loved ones. We urge the Indonesian government to build on this momentum with tangible steps to take forward a meaningful, inclusive and participatory transitional justice process, guaranteeing truth, justice, reparations and non-recurrence to victims and affected communities, including victims of conflict-related sexual violence. A comprehensive transitional justice process will help to break the decades-long cycles of impunity, advance national healing and strengthen Indonesia's democracy.
Okay, thank you. So I hope that you already get the picture, the general picture of human rights situation in particular the future of settlement of gross violation of human rights in Indonesia, Mr. Basil. So now I have to inform you that all of the participants are university students from the University of Bung Karno. They are law faculty, and they already learn human rights course in the class, already discuss human rights, and also they already learned the President Joko Widodo policy, presidential degree, and also already learned some human rights cases. So shall we start with Mr. Basil or I think Mr. Basil first, yeah. Then
no, I think you can begin with your colleague.
Mr. Untung. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Untung will speak Bahasa or English?
Okay, I want to speak English. Is it
okay,
okay, my voice?
Okay, but Pak Bejo, the time is maybe 15 minutes, yeah, 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, nanti saya terjemahkan, Pak Bejo. Nanti saya terjemahkan ya, soalnya ada beberapa mungkin yang perlu.
Oke, kalau begitu, kalau ini yang ngomong bahasa lebih banyak bahasa Indonesia saja kalau begitu.
Tapi Pak Basil?
Ya, Pak Basil urusan Bung Kris yang menerjemahin lah.
Gak apa-apa, Pak Bejo speak English is okay, no problem.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, can we start now?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much, dear all the students of the University of Bung Karno, and also my dear friends, Mr. Basil in Hong Kong. Thanks a lot with the opportunity given to me to speak about, to comment about the what's called non-judicial process that is launched by Mr. Joko Widodo. I can say that what so-called the solutions of the non-judicial process does not touch the root of the case. Yeah, I myself as the victim, yeah, I think we talk about reparations, talk about compensations, but without solving the root of the case, I think it will be useless. Yeah, because until now, the perpetrators, the people who support the killing, still alive. Yeah, and they think that they do not make mistakes. Yeah, while we are the victims, it is already a matter of fact that we are the victimized by the government, victimized by the military, until now has not been solved according to the law. Yeah, that is why I privately say that the solutions of non-judicial process we should reject. Yeah. Now, for example, the example in Rumah Gedong Aceh. Yeah, the government, the military bulldozer. Yeah. Crash out the remain of the place that formerly the place for the torture. Also in 1965 case, yeah, there are so many mass grave, there are so many concentration camp of the labor force also now disappear. Yeah, it means that the governments directly or indirectly doesn't want to open up the case according to the judicial process. That is why if Mr. Mahfud MD say, oh, I don't want, I still want to open up the judicial process, I think, according to me, we can say it is nonsense. Yeah, if the government would like to solve the problem according to the judicial case, why not wait until 12 years? Yeah, you see that the Indonesian Human Rights Commission has already launched in the year of 2012. Yeah, that is clear that the government, the power, the military, has an influence, has a role in despairing, in crashing the Indonesian Communist Party. That is why this is the first step. If the government would like to open up the judicial process, the Attorney General should build up the ad hoc human rights court. If not, I think it will not has a good result. So in short language, I can say that non-judicial process will not solve the problem. This is the first one. The second one,
Pak Bejo, saya
until now,
sebentar, Pak. Saya terjemahkan singkat ya.
Okay, please.
Jadi terima kasih banyak mahasiswa UBK dan juga Pak Basil Fernando terkait keputusan Presiden yang penyelesaian non-judisial. Saya menyatakan proses ini tidak menyentuh akar persoalan ya, karena saya sebagai korban ketika bicara tentang remedi atau kompensasi, restitusi, rehabilitasi tanpa menyentuh akar persoalan atau tanpa menyentuh akar kasusnya, ini tidak berguna atau useless karena pelaku masih hidup. Kita faktanya menjadi korban, dikorbankan oleh rezim pada saat itu, militer pada saat itu, dan belum diselesaikan secara hukum kasusnya. Solusinya untuk itu non-judicial harus ditolak. Kemudian contoh Rumah Gedong, salah satu kasus di Aceh, pemerintah justru malah membuldoser bangunan yang dulu digunakan untuk tempat penyiksaan. Dan juga ada beberapa situs-situs bersejarah ya, kuburan massal dan lain-lain untuk peristiwa 65 itu juga hilang, terancam hilang. Jadi pemerintah tidak bisa menghindari judicial proses. Pernyataan Pak Mahfud yang akan merujuk pada judicial proses itu nonsens ya, omong kosong. Untuk itu kita mendorong Komnas HAM yang sudah mengeluarkan hasil penyelidikan sejak 2012 harus dilanjutkan. Karena apa? Ada dugaan militer berperan. Kemudian dalam pelanggaran 65 itu juga peran rezim pada saat itu. Untuk itu Jaksa Agung harus melakukan penuntutan. Jika tidak, maka hasilnya akan sangat buruk. Silakan Pak Bejo.
The important ones that the government should open up the truth. What is the background of the case? Not only 1965, but also all the human rights violations. Trisakti Semanggi, and then also Tanjung Priok, Talang Sari, Papua, Aceh, and so on. The government should give a clear and transparent who is the actor that makes the massacre, makes the mass killing, the violence in Indonesia. This is the most. That is why I say, without opening up the truth, I think I'm sorry to say that the government will give the step useless. So, for example, now the government would like to give what's called scholarship, would like to give reparations of medical. I think the medical medical treatment about the social psychology and so on, it is the right of the victim. There is non-judicial process or not, judicial or not judicial process. The rights of the victim should be given. So that's very important. I say in this case, please the government, without waiting for the implementations of the judicial process. Also, it is very necessary because the victim is now already elderly, sickness, and life in very difficult situations. So and this must not just like the regular process. Should be extraordinary. Because the victims, not just only common people, they have already spent many years in the prison, they have got already torture and so on. That is why I think the government should also give the right for the victim as soon as possible without waiting for the judicial or non-judicial process. Please translate.
Pemerintah harus membuka kebenaran dari kasus-kasus tersebut, apa latar belakang kasus itu, dan juga pelanggaran HAM yang terjadi tadi seperti Trisakti, Talang Sari, 65, Aceh, dan lain-lain. Pemerintah harus menginformasikan kasus tersebut secara clear, siapa yang diduga pelaku, dan lain sebagainya. Tanpa membuka kebenaran, ya mohon maaf, pemerintah kebijakannya itu tidak berguna. Kemudian pemerintah memberikan beasiswa, memberikan reparasi, memberikan fasilitas kesehatan. Ini adalah hak-hak korban. Jadi tanpa non-judicial proses pun itu sebenarnya harus diberikan. Maka tolong pemerintah harus mengedepankan judicial proses. Karena victim atau korban itu hidup dalam kondisi sulit, banyak yang meninggal, sudah tua, dan lain sebagainya. Jadi ini pendekatannya harus extraordinary atau luar biasa, karena korban bukan orang biasa. Mereka pernah ditahan, disiksa, dibunuh, dan juga dihilangkan, dan lain sebagainya. Silakan Pak Jo.
Yes, until now, we are the victims of human rights stand up in front of the state police already 779, yeah, 778, I think, 778 times, yeah. But the governments never pay attention. Now, my voice, yeah, this is the voice of the victim. I'm sorry to say that some victim that, for example, they support the what's called non-judicial process. I think I'm sure they are not the victims, yeah, because that is why not the government listen the voice of the victim. The voice of the victim is we demand, yeah, the judicial process is very important and should be launched first, yeah, without before talking about reparation and so on, because there is the step by step what's called how to fulfill the case of the human rights violations. Please, Aris.
Jadi sampai saat ini ya, kita ini sudah menggelar aksi Kamisan yang di depan Istana Negara 778 kali aksi, tapi pemerintah tidak memberikan perhatian serius. Pernyataan saya ini adalah pernyataan korban, karena saya adalah bagian dari korban. Kenapa pemerintah tidak mendengarkan suara-suara korban? Suara korban adalah kita meminta judicial proses harus dilaksanakan terlebih dahulu tanpa harus non-judicial proses. Silakan, Pak.
Yes, so this is very important that in order the solutions, yeah, in line with the voice of the victim, yeah, the governments should invite us to listen the voice of human rights victims. Yeah, this is very important because I think it will be useless, yeah, the offer of the government of the non-judicial process. It is really far away from our demand, yeah. That is why not? Now, I am sure that my government would like to listen to the voice of the victim, but in reality, they do not want to listen. Why? Because in the cycle, in the ring power, yeah, there are so many what's so-called general that are still involved with the case of the human rights violation. That is why Mr. Jokowi, our president, should have a brief enough. I say should have a strong leadership that it is wrong to use the what's so-called perpetrators in the cycle of the palace. Because if we still, if the government, let us say Jokowi or whoever would like to continue the presidency, still using the perpetrators inside of the cycle of the power, I think it will be useless. That is why, again, that is very important. That is more demand. The perpetrators should be swept out from the government ring of power. Please, Mr. Riz.
Ya, secara intinya jadi Pak Bejo menyampaikan ini sangat penting ya agar solusinya itu inline atau sesuai dengan suara korban. Pemerintah harus berani mengundang korban, keluarga korban, karena kalau tidak mendengarkan suara korban maka tawaran dari pemerintah non-judicial proses ini adalah useless atau tidak akan bermanfaat. Karena ini akan jauh dari harapan dan suara korban. Jadi saya pribadi yakin bahwa pemerintah sebenarnya mau mendengar, tapi faktanya mereka tidak melakukan itu karena di lingkaran Pak Presiden Joko Widodo itu diduga banyak petinggi-petinggi militer, jenderal militer yang dahulu terlibat dalam peristiwa pelanggaran HAM berat. Jadi Presiden harus berani, harus menunjukkan kepemimpinan yang kuat, ya, karena orang-orang di sekitar dia itu berpotensi akan menyulitkan kebijakan penyelesaian kasus pelanggaran HAM berat. Silakan, Pak.
Yes, that is why to solve the problem of the case of the 1965 tragedy, I think that is also not so easy. As long as the new order regime policy still being used by the government until nowadays, I think this is also impossible. Yeah, that is why I demand that all the constitutional, all the regulation that is derived from the new order regime should be reviewed, should be wiped out, yeah, Because if it is not, I think this is still very difficult. Until this very moment, yeah, the people still make a stigma for us as the victim. So what's called the left side, yeah. I do not agree. We are the people that is the victim should be treated as the common people, yeah. Until now, we do not talk about the ideology or the politics, but we talk about the human right. Please, Mr. Chris.
Untuk itu ya penyelesaian contohnya misalnya peristiwa 65 ini tidak mudah sepanjang kebijakan atau hukum yang digunakan oleh Orde Baru masih digunakan oleh pemerintah saat ini, makanya akan sulit. Maka saya sebagai korban meminta hukum-hukum atau kebijakan penyelenggaraan Orde Baru itu harus direview atau dihapus. Kalau tidak maka akan menyulitkan. Orang masih membuat atau memberikan stigma kepada kita sebagai sayap kiri atau left wing, kemudian kita harus diperlakukan juga sebagai orang Indonesia sama dengan yang lain, tidak diperlakukan secara berbeda atau diskriminasi. Silakan.
So, the most important ones, the perpetrators and whoever supported the crimes in the year of 1965 should be trial to the court. Yeah, if not, yeah, they will always repeat the same thing in the future. That is why if the government say, in order to avoid the repeatedness, the requirement in the future, I think it is very necessary that the Human Rights Court should be built up and the Attorney General do not wait too long. The National Human Rights Commission should push up again and again. Yeah. If not, I'm sorry to say that the fulfillment of the case of 1965 and the others will be useless. I think this one, all my statement, Chris Piantoro. Thank you very much.
Baik, Pak Bejo menyatakan yang penting ya, pelaku atau siapapun yang terlibat dalam peristiwa 65 misalnya, harus dibawa ke pengadilan HAM. Kalau tidak, maka ini akan berulang peristiwa yang sama di kemudian hari. Maka pemerintah yang menyatakan bahwa agar tidak berulang, maka pengadilan HAM harus dibentuk. Kita harus mendorong Komnas HAM terus-menerus agar melanjutkan kasus-kasus tersebut ke proses hukum. Jika tidak, maka kasus 65 dan kasus-kasus tersebut tidak akan pernah selesai. Terima kasih. Thank you very much, Mr. Bejo Untung already give us a brief picture, general picture, and very important history of what happened in the past. Mr. Basil, now is your turn to complement our discussion today. Please, I will translate as usual. Thank you.
Okay. I'm very happy to be with you, the law students, and also with in the company of a person like Mr. Utong and Chris. So we could discuss some things which may be useful on this issue.
Oh, terima kasih. Saya sangat senang bersama Anda sekalian dan juga Pak Untung dan juga Chris. Kita bisa berdiskusi hal-hal yang penting hari ini. Please continue.
Mr. Untung has placed in skeleton some of the basic issues.
Pak Untung sudah menyampaikan beberapa isu yang mendasar.
Now, the key issue hangs around two words, that is judicial accountability and what are called non-judicial measures.
Sekarang ini persoalan kuncinya adalah pada akuntabilitas judicial atau akuntabilitas penegakan hukum dan juga non-judicial.
Now, first of all, we should have a clear idea of what do you mean by judicial accountability.
Jadi sekarang kita harus punya ide yang clear ya, apa itu akuntabilitas judicial.
Judicial accountability, first of all, is to recognize what has happened as all these events that you mentioned. They mentioned about several, beginning with the 1965 massacre. Each of these things as crimes and not just some bad things.
Judicial accountability ya, atau akuntabilitas judicial itu adalah hal untuk mengakui apa yang pernah terjadi. Misalnya peristiwa 65 atau yang disampaikan oleh orang UN tadi. Jadi ini adalah peristiwa pelanggaran HAM, bukan sekedar hal yang buruk.
Then what do you mean by a crime?
Dan apa yang dimaksud dengan kejahatan?
A crime is something that is acknowledged by the whole of that society as something that is totally against the well-being and the social order of that society.
Jadi kejahatan atau crime itu adalah sesuatu yang diakui oleh seluruh umat manusia ya, atau society yang secara utuh atau sepenuhnya bertentangan dengan kehendak umat manusia dan juga aturan yang hidup dalam masyarakat.
A crime is something that the society is obliged to punish.
Jadi kejahatan itu adalah sesuatu yang masyarakat punya kewajiban untuk menghukum.
There are many other things which may be bad, but not crimes.
Banyak hal yang buruk tapi bukan kejahatan.
If things are merely bad, but not crimes, society has no obligation to criminalize it and to make sure that they are punished.
Jika hal buruk itu bukan kejahatan, maka masyarakat tidak punya obligation, tidak punya kewajiban untuk punish atau menghukum.
Now the next question is, why should you punish crimes?
Pertanyaannya, kenapa kita harus menghukum kejahatan?
Why can't we say when there are crimes, well, it's okay, let's shake hands and let's pay some compensation and finish it. And why do you say no, that is not enough?
Ya, kenapa kita nggak mengatakan ya udah nggak apa-apa, itu kejahatan, salaman, kasih kompensasi, kemudian cukup.
We cannot say that because crime is an act against not just individuals who suffered, but to that entire society and social order.
Kita tidak bisa mengatakan kejahatan itu tidak hanya individu ya, tapi ini menyakiti seluruh umat manusia atau lingkungan yang lebih luas, dan juga social order atau aturan yang hidup dalam masyarakat.
Crimes need to be punished because the social order has been severely attacked, and as a reaction by the society to get back to its normal state, its natural state, it must fight back. Otherwise, it will remain victim of that crime forever.
Kejahatan harus dihukum karena kejahatan itu bertentangan dengan aturan atau peraturan atau hukum. Itu sudah menyerang peraturan hukum, dan juga maka civil society atau masyarakat harus bereaksi kembali, harus mengembalikan kepada kehidupan normal, negara yang normal. Maka harus melakukan serangan balik. Kalau tidak melakukan hal itu, maka kita akan tetap menjadi korban selamanya.
So this simple thing about crimes is what applies to a very big, grave crime like killing of millions or 100,000s, as in the case of 1965 massacre, and also other very big, grave crimes. So among the crimes also, there is the graver crimes. There are lesser crimes and graver crimes. Now, what you deal in Indonesia are the gravest possible crimes.
Ini adalah hal simpel ya tentang kejahatan. Seperti misalnya tadi ada kejahatan dan juga ada kejahatan besar, misalnya peristiwa 65 dan juga kejahatan-kejahatan besar lainnya. Di antara kejahatan itu adalah kejahatan luar biasa. Kemudian kita tadi juga melihat less crime atau kejahatan yang tidak luar biasa dan juga kejahatan yang grave atau besar gitu ya. Dan di Indonesia hal ini terjadi.
If we are going to say that one man who kills 10 people should be said, he must make an apology to the people, families of the people who have been killed, and give them some little money. Do we accept that?
Ya, misalnya satu orang membunuh 10 orang ya, kemudian minta maaf kepada keluarganya dan memberikan sedikit uang, apakah kita menerima itu?
If that is the case, anybody who has some money can kill as many as he likes, and then after that say, I'm sorry, and then give them some money, and let's say it's forgotten.
Jika itu kasusnya, maka orang-orang yang banyak uang dia bisa melakukan pembunuhan, kemudian minta maaf, kasih uang, dan sudah lupakan.
In that case, you don't need jails.
Dalam kasus itu kita nggak perlu jail atau penjara.
Why do we have jails?
Kenapa kita punya penjara?
That is because certain crimes had to be punished severely.
Karena,
Otherwise, the society cannot continue.
Ya, karena beberapa kasus harus dihukum secara layak. Sebaliknya, kalau itu tidak terjadi, maka kehidupan masyarakat tidak bisa berjalan dengan baik.
So thereby, we are telling in our society, there are limits. And if you go beyond a certain limits by committing certain crimes, we don't tolerate that. We cannot tolerate that. We cannot live with that.
Maka dalam masyarakat itu ada limit ya atau keterbatasan. Jika itu melampaui batas, maka kita tidak bisa mentolerir itu.
So this is not just a question about, doing something, but is about returning to civilization. Are we going to live in a civilized society? Or are we going to tolerate barbaric, most inhumane, cruel, and the worst things that human beings can do?
Ini tidak hanya pertanyaan tentang sesuatu ya, tapi kita ini ingin mengembalikan kehidupan yang civilized, yang humanis gitu ya, mengedepankan supremasi sipil. Apakah kita mentoleransi most inhuman, misalnya hal yang sangat bertentangan dengan umat manusia, cruel atau jahat dan lain-lain?
If we say that in our society, even killing few 100,000 people is no big deal, then we are acknowledging our society has some very grave, big problem from a civilizational point of view.
Jadi jika kita menyatakan ya, misalnya di masyarakat kita ada ribuan orang dibunuh dan hal ini kita kompromi atau nggak apa-apa, maka ya kita mengabaikan nilai-nilai yang hidup dalam masyarakat ya, nilai-nilai kemanusiaan. Maka ini adalah masalah besar dalam kacamata umat manusia.
So we by dealing with it as a crime, we are recognizing that these acts are acts against society and acts against the whole social order and the state of the nation.
Maka dengan menyatakan hal-hal itu adalah kejahatan, maka kita mengakui peristiwa itu bertentangan dengan kemanusiaan, dengan peraturan yang hidup dalam masyarakat, dan juga dengan umat seluruh bangsa atau whole nation ya. Silakan, please.
And the world also considered this issue for a long time and said that certain crimes are not just crime against that particular state or particular society, but they are crimes against the whole world. These are called crimes against humanity.
Dan dunia juga sudah lama mempertimbangkan hal ini ya, karena kejahatan atau pelanggaran HAM tadi itu tidak hanya kejahatan di satu negara, tapi juga di seluruh dunia, yang kemudian muncul istilah kejahatan terhadap kemanusiaan.
So in 1965 and subsequent events, that time the people who did that have committed a crime against Indonesian society, Indonesian state, and the world as a whole, and against humanity, entire humanity.
Maka dalam peristiwa 65 misalkan, dan peristiwa-peristiwa setelahnya ya, tadi itu, mereka yang diduga telah melakukan kejahatan terhadap seluruh masyarakat Indonesia, melakukan kejahatan terhadap negara, dan seluruh umat manusia.
Now, why we asked the earlier question, why do we need crimes to be punished and not just paying compensation and things like that? Why should it be punished? Now, it is because something must be done to get back to the state before such an attack was made against the Indonesian society, Indonesian state, and as a whole world, and against humanity. We need to get back there. If we don't, we will be living a less civilized life.
Sekarang kita tahu ya kenapa perlu memahami bahwa kejahatan itu harus dipanis, harus dihukum, karena hal itu tersebut memang harus diselesaikan untuk kembali kepada negara yang ideal ya, kemudian mengembalikan harkat martabat umat manusia, maka hal tersebut harus dilakukan. Jika itu tidak, maka kita akan mengalami less civilized atau kondisi masyarakat yang lebih buruk.
First, as a law students, and this will be important for you, not only for these events, but to understand the entire world. This debate is going on in many countries, and it has happened throughout history. Understanding history from this point of view, understanding the history of crime, why thing called crime began to be recognized, why crimes could only be punished, crimes has to be punished, and the punishment, however, must be done in a fair manner. That is what is called a judicial punishment.
Sebagai mahasiswa hukum ya, kita perlu paham ada banyak perdebatan di banyak negara, memahami sejarah tentang kejahatan dan juga atau crimes yang perlu dibawa ke punishment atau hukuman. Karena kejahatan memang harus dihukum dalam kondisi yang fair manner atau yang fair ya, yang fair itu tidak memihak. Itu silakan, please, Mr. Basir.
So the distinction between judicial approach and non-judicial approach is whether you recognize these as crimes or not. And secondly, if they are crimes, then do you deal with them in the way we deal with any crime? Now that is the issue. If it is non-judicial, it means you are telling this is not a crime.
Oke, itu suara apa ya? Mungkin bisa tadi saya agak keputus. Perbedaan judicial approach ya, pendekatan judicial dengan non-judicial ini adalah soal pengakuan sebagai kejahatan atau bukan satu peristiwa itu. Jika ini kejahatan, maka kita harus menangani sebuah peristiwa tersebut sebagaimana kita harus menangani sebuah peristiwa kejahatan.
So let's make a clear distinction between the suffering caused to the victims and their survivors and the damage caused to the Indonesian society, Indonesian state, and to humanity as two different things.
Sorry, mari membuat perbedaannya antara ganti rugi untuk korban, kemudian kerusakan untuk seluruh umat, untuk seluruh masyarakat Indonesia dan juga negara Indonesia.
That's an issue I think you should discuss a lot if you want to understand this debate. Do you, what is your attitude in your society? You say serious, grave crimes should be dealt with by just saying apologies and giving some compensation, or that the damage done to the society, to the state, the nation, and to the humanity as a whole should be restored or attempt to make a restored in the process of the way we deal with crimes.
Masalah ini harus didiskusikan ya. Kita harus sering mendiskusikan persoalan ini agar kita paham persoalannya. Apakah cukup meminta maaf saja, memberikan kompensasi atas kerusakan korban, masyarakat, negara, dan seluruh kehidupan umat manusia untuk kita restore atau kita perbaiki dalam cara bagaimana kita menangani kejahatan yang sebenarnya, yang ideal, cara menangani kejahatan yang ideal. Silakan, please, Mr. Masih.
It is a good thing to compensate for the victims. It is also a good thing to provide for psychological, medical, all these things. That is very necessary. However, that is only a small part of the picture. The real problem is how to cure, healing. The question of healing means how to cure a wounded, destroyed social psyche, social mind, social conscience.
Jadi memang itu bagus ya, memberikan kompensasi kepada korban, keluarga korban, memberikan rehabilitasi psikologi, medikal, dan lain-lain itu penting. Namun ini harus dipahami bahwa ini adalah baru sebagian kecil dari gambar pelanggaran hak asasi manusia tadi. Intinya adalah bagaimana proses healing atau memperbaiki itu secara menyeluruh, mengobati luka, kemudian memperbaiki kerusakan, memulihkan cara berpikir atau pemikiran masyarakat yang sudah rusak, dan juga jiwa atau kehendak seluruh masyarakat itu harus diperbaiki. Silakan, please, Mr. Basil.
So, we punish crimes in order to make the society strong. Society highly based on high standards. Society based on respect for each other at a higher level. To make the society as a whole strong. But if you don't take the proper action, we allow the society to remain weak. We leave the room for these things to happen again and again.
Maka kita perlu mengakui ya bahwa agar masyarakat itu kuat, ya. Kemudian kita perlu menghukum kejahatan ya, agar masyarakat itu kuat, kemudian memiliki standar yang tinggi, menghormati satu sama lain dalam level yang cukup tinggi, kemudian seluruh kehidupan masyarakat juga kembali normal. Maka jika itu tidak dilakukan, maka akan terjadi keberulangan dan masyarakat akan menderita.
Now, if you are sick, what is the point at what is the time at which you begin to take treatment for your sickness? It is when you recognize that you are sick. If you don't recognize that you are sick, you will not want treatment, medical treatment. You try to get medical treatment only when you realize and when you acknowledge that you are suffering from a sickness, and you will take the treatment as soon as possible if the disease you suffer from is really very dangerous.
Jadi jika Anda sakit, ya ini perumpamaannya, maka Anda akan berobat. Kapan Anda akan berobat? Ketika Anda merasakan itu memang sakit. Jika Anda tidak merasakan itu, maka tidak perlu berobat. Maka Anda harus sadar bahwa Anda menderita karena sakit itu karena ketika Anda menderita sakit itulah yang menggerakkan Anda untuk berobat. Apalagi jika penyakitnya itu penyakit yang berbahaya.
If you have a very grave illness, and you say, oh, I only have a headache, I will take some Disprin. Will it help?
Jika Anda punya penyakit yang berbahaya ya, kemudian hanya mengambil obat pusing kepala, apakah itu cukup?
Non-judicial remedies are something like that. You have a grave illness, but you don't want to acknowledge that. You say, let's do something like the person who has a serious illness and takes only some treatment for a cold.
Jadi non-judicial atau pendekatan di luar proses hukum itu perumpamaannya seperti itu ya. Kasus besar, kasus luar biasa, tapi tidak diakui. Kemudian hanya seperti orang yang sakit parah minum obat yang tidak mengobati penyakit.
So therefore, if you really want your society, like others in their society, to get cured, to be healed, then there must be an acknowledgement of guilt. Something terrible have been done, and the nation is guilty. Indonesian nation is guilty for that crime. And now they must try to cure themselves. And the medicine that helps to cure is justice.
Maka ya jika Anda ingin kehidupan masyarakat di negara Anda itu lebih baik, maka harus ada pengakuan rasa bersalah atau pengakuan dosa ya, sesuatu yang buruk atau yang jahat pernah terjadi di masa lalu. Dan ini adalah kesalahan bangsa atau kesalahan masyarakat bangsa gitu ya. Bangsa Indonesia pernah bersalah atas peristiwa itu, harus tumbuh perasaan itu. Nah, jika itu sudah terjadi, maka obatnya adalah justice atau keadilan.
So the first step, if you want to get the judicial remedy, is that you should admit, and your society should begin to admit, we are a guilty people. We as a whole, not only the military people who killed, the nation is guilty of these grave crimes. If you begin to admit there's some big guilt in this society and that you have to deal with that, then you can create the kind of discussion within the society which is necessary in order to give the power to demand for justice.
Ya, tahap awal untuk saat ini Anda atau kita perlu mengakui bahwa kita ini bersalah ya atas peristiwa yang terjadi di masa lalu. Kita harus mengakui bahwa tidak hanya militer yang bersalah, tapi kita sebagai bangsa bersalah dan juga punya tanggung jawab atas peristiwa itu. Maka untuk tahap berikutnya kita bisa mendorong diskusi-diskusi untuk membuat penguatan kepada masyarakat agar bisa menuntut keadilan.
We must be able to say, our guilt, our fault, and let us get rid of, let us pay back of this guilt by doing something real, something really make a change to the whole society. If you have more people demanding that, then this whole thing will become a meaningful debate. And you as a law students, maybe the rest of your life, it will give a meaning to your life when you try to correct something really that has gone wrong in your society. Till then, the blood of those people will be on the hands of not only the military people who killed, but every person in your society.
Ya, saya terjemahkan singkat aja. Kita harus bisa mengatakan bahwa kita guilty atau bersalah, keliru ya atas peristiwa di masa lalu, dan kita perlu menebus dengan melakukan hal-hal yang nyata agar terjadi perubahan di masyarakat. Jika lebih banyak orang terlibat dalam diskusi, sadar kemudian meminta hal itu, maka akan ada perdebatan dalam masyarakat untuk mendorong adanya koreksi hal-hal yang keliru di masa lalu, dan hal ini tidak hanya menjadi tanggung jawab mereka yang melakukan peristiwa itu, tapi jadi tanggung jawab seluruh bangsa.
You must be able to tell your government, your president, all our hands, in all our hands, there is blood. We need to cure, we need to wash our hands. And the way we can wash our hands is only by trying to ensure the real justice. That is, collecting all the evidence of what happened, openly bringing that into discussion, telling the truth, acknowledging the truth of what has happened, and then taking whatever corrective measures that are needed. Till then, you as young people must tell your others, we don't want to carry this blood in our hand. It is time that we get rid of this. Not by forgetting, not by doing all kinds of funny things, but acknowledging really what happened and trying to take a real corrective measures. So then the new order principles that on which your society is built can be challenged. Till then, you will not be able to challenge them.
Kita harus bisa menyampaikan ini kepada Presiden ya, bahwa di tangan kita ini ada darah, berlumuran darah. Kita perlu membersihkan tangan kita. Kita perlu menghilangkan darah dalam tangan kita dengan mencuci tangan. Nah, mencuci tangan di sini adalah dengan mengadili peristiwa tersebut, menghadirkan keadilan yang nyata, ya, mengumpulkan bukti-bukti yang nyata. Kemudian membawa hal tersebut juga ke dalam diskusi-diskusi agar dipahami oleh banyak orang. Kebenaran harus dibuka. Maka Anda sebagai anak muda harus memberitahu yang lain bahwa kita tidak mau membawa darah atau lumuran darah ini ke dalam tangan kita. Kita ingin menyelesaikan ini. Bukan untuk melupakan, tapi peristiwa itu harus diakui, diperbaiki, diproses agar masa lalu bisa kita selesaikan. Maka kita bisa men-challenge society atau masyarakat kita. Please, Mr. Basil.
So I open up for questions and discussion, because I think for one morning, I think a number of very important issues have been raised. Of course, this will take a long time to properly to grasp all the aspects of this case, and I think we should have more further discussions. But I think for an introduction, this gives you a background to initiate this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Basil, for the introduction. We have a question in the chat room. But in Bahasa, maybe I will summarize. This is from Agnes Yunis, student. She has a question. It is difficult to collect evidence for the past abuse because the case occurred a long time ago. Yeah, it's gonna be very difficult to collect evidence, and also maybe the witnesses also difficult to speak up about the cases. Meanwhile, non-judicial process should be conducted by opening the truth and also provide remedy for victims and also family of victims. To address the gross violation of human rights, especially which occurred in the past, we need to do extraordinary effort or real effort, such as establish the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The question is that this long question, yeah. How is the role of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in the way to address the past human rights abuses? If it is real that the role of the RC to address the past abuses, why the law number 26 of 2004 on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was annulled or cancelled by the Constitutional Court? I hope that you got the point, Mr. Basil. The case occurred long times ago, difficult to collect evidence. It is also a real problem for witnesses to speak up. And now we also have problem that we don't have national law on the TRC. So this is real problem that we are facing right now. Please, your opinion, Mr. Basil.
See, you are absolutely correct, saying that there are very serious problems. We have to start with that. But then these are problems that has to be faced. For example, the question of collecting evidence. If you will find that in many countries, similar problems have been there. But if there is genuine attempt, there will be many sources which will open up. Today we are discovering things that have happened some 4,000, 6,000, 10,000 years back. That is because whenever first thing is that there must be a belief in the people that there is genuine attempt to find the truth. If it is there, people will come forward in many ways. Memories don't die easily. People may die, but their memories are transmitted in many ways and they are available in many things. And that is what we know. Today there is what is called forensic science. If you want to find the truth, you can. But if the society is not ready, the society says, well, you know, let's forget it, then you will never begin. That is the same thing about the laws, that reconciliation law cancelled. That is it, because your society is not ready. Your society's demand is not strong. But there is some demand. That is why the government has responded even to this extent. They are trying to show that they are doing something. That shows that there is some demand, but it's not enough. So the main thing is, don't take the approach, if you have some discipline, minor medicine, this is going to go away. No, your problem is far too serious, and you will have to live with it for the rest of your life and in the future, for the entire history of your country. What happened has been a historical problem, historical guilt.
Oh, okay, I forgot to translate. Oke, Mr. Basil, ya Anda benar, ini persoalan yang sangat serius ya, dan masalah ini juga memang harus diselesaikan. Misalnya pertanyaan Anda tentang sulitnya mengumpulkan evidence atau bukti ya, jika Anda, tapi ini solusinya salah satu caranya adalah dengan pendekatan yang genuine ya, atau mungkin tidak ada modifikasi pendekatan gitulah. Maka akan banyak bukti yang bisa kita buka ya. Kita harus paham bahwa pendekatan yang murni ya untuk membuka keadilan ya itu akan bisa dilakukan. Anda harus paham bahwa ingatan manusia itu tidak bisa dibunuh atau dihapuskan. Manusia bisa mati tapi ingatan itu tidak akan hilang. Dia bisa didokumentasikan dalam banyak cara, dalam banyak media. Misalnya tadi Pak Basil menyebut forensic science ya. Jika Anda ingin membuka kebenaran, itu bisa dilakukan. Tapi peristiwa ini menunjukkan masyarakat Anda tidak siap, malah kecenderungannya melupakan. Ini terjadi, misalnya justru penghapusan undang-undang tentang Komisi Kebenaran dan Rekonsiliasi tadi ya. Maka ini adalah bukti bahwa tekanan masyarakat itu tidak kuat ya. Dan sebaliknya, pemerintah ingin terlihat bekerja justru dengan membentuk tim non-judicial. Maka ini persoalannya serius, ya, dan ini harus ada dorongan dan tekanan agar kita memahami ada hal yang salah di masa lalu. We still have one more, Mr. Batul. Pak Bejo, you want to answer the question in Bahasa? It's okay, no problems.
Okay, yes, I will add the answer, yeah. Okay, please translate into English, Chris, ya, bit by bit. Jadi tadi ada pertanyaan mengapa Undang-Undang KKR dibatalkan, ya. Saya pernah menanyakan ini kepada Jimny Asidiki yang ketika itu menjadi Ketua Mahkamah Konstitusi. Sebetulnya yang dibatalkan itu adalah ada pasal yang merugikan bagi korban. Ya. Kalau telah isinya ialah apabila pelaku sudah mengakui kesalahan, minta ampun, maka dia akan dibebaskan beberapa punishment yang lainnya. Nah, ini yang ditolak oleh korban, tetapi akhirnya Undang-Undang KKR itu dibatalkan seluruhnya oleh Mahkamah Konstitusi. Nah, Asidiki pernah bilang, ya, tapi ini dia bilang off the record, karena dia betul-betul dipaksa oleh tentara, ya, bahwa lebih baik batalkan saja, jangan mengungkit-ungkit masalah tragedi 65 atau kejahatan kemanusiaan. Kira begitu. Itu yang pertama. Silakan, Bung Haris. Please.
So, Mr. Basil, the point that Mr. Bejo said is why the Truth and Reconciliation Commission law were annulled or cancelled by the Constitutional Court at the time. I personally have asked Mr. Jimny Asidik as the chair of the Constitutional Court at the time. Actually, the provision that was cancelled by the Constitutional Court mainly focused on the article that against the right of the victims. The article stated that if the perpetrators acknowledge the case which occurred in the past, then no need to be prosecuted before the court. And then at the time there were also allegations of pressure from the military to abolish the law. Terjawab ya, teman-teman.
Okay, yes, I will continue. I think I disagree with the statement that to fulfill the case of judicial process is very difficult because there is no fact and no victims, no traitors and so on. I completely disagree of this statement. Yeah, I would like to say that until now I can say the perpetrators, yeah, the killers, for example in Medan, in Yogyakarta, in Tuban, in Aceh, still alive. Yeah, I think they should be interrogated and get the information who is the actors behind this tragedy. This first. The second one. Nowadays, the scientists, the historians from many countries such like Australia, Canada, British, Germany, and so on has already made an investigation, found just like Madam Jess Melvin, yeah, that the killing of tragedy 1965 has already begun since the 1st of October by the radiogram, yeah, of the military that the Communist Party should be crushed, yeah, and so on and so on. It means that is already the fact, yeah, the fact. So this is not imagination. Second, yeah, the third, why BKB 65 has found also the evidence. There are so many mass graves in many areas in Indonesia, yeah. In Wonosobo, I have already made an exhumations, yeah, and there are so many. I have counted around 356. The number is still going on, yeah. This is number 4. Administrative letters from the Attorney General, from the military, Kopkamtib, and so on. This means also the involvement of the government, involvement of the power, the military, that in genocide of 1960. So quite clear. And the last but not least, the victims, the witnesses now still alive can open up the story about the case. Please.
Oke, yang disampaikan Pak Bejo poinnya ya, saya tidak setuju tadi dengan poin bahwa kasus masa lalu itu sulit diselesaikan, bukti-buktinya susah dan lain-lain. Saya sebagai korban bisa informasikan bahwa masih banyak korban yang hidup. Ya, mereka itu harus diperiksa, harus didokumentasikan kesaksiannya untuk mendapatkan informasi, salah satunya adalah tentang siapa yang diduga sebagai pelaku. Ini sudah banyak dilakukan oleh ilmuwan, oleh pakar dari Kanada, dari Australia dan banyak negara lain. Ya, mereka membuat investigasi. Ya, salah satu poinnya adalah bahwa pembunuhan atau pembantaian 65 itu sudah terjadi sejak bulan Oktober tahun 65. Ini artinya adalah fakta, bukan angan-angan atau imajinasi. Kenapa harus mulai dengan kasus 65? Karena saya menemukan banyak kuburan massal ya. Saya menghitung misalnya tadi sekitar 356 kuburan massal di seluruh Indonesia. Kemudian ada juga surat-surat ya yang dikeluarkan oleh kejaksaan, oleh Kopkamtib ya, Komando Keamanan dan Ketertiban pada saat ini. Itu adalah sebenarnya diduga kuat sebagai bukti keterlibatan negara dalam peristiwa 65.
Again, I would like to add, now there's also the classifications of the document of the CIA, United Kingdom, and also West Germany now already open up. Yeah, now please look at the film of the Hiding History 1965 that is launched by the Redfish from Germany. That's quite clear. Yeah, quite clear that the involvement of the foreign countries in the genocide of 1965. Please, this is the challenge for you as the students. Yeah, in the future you have to give an energy, ability to open up this case. So my point, because the governments nowadays has no encouragement, has no ability, yeah, has no power. That is why the case of human rights still disclosed. Yeah. So I think that is once again the challenge for the young generations to open up in the future. Thank you very much, Mr. Chris.
Terima kasih Pak Bejo. Jadi Pak Bejo menyampaikan, ya tadi saya ingin menambahkan ya, ada dokumen-dokumen yang sifatnya informasi dari CIA, dari United Kingdom, kemudian West Germany ya, Jerman Barat, ya itu sudah terbuka. Dan itu sangat clear menjadi indikasi kuat ada keterlibatan negara luar ya dalam genosida yang terjadi dalam peristiwa 65. Ini adalah tantangan ya buat Anda sebagai mahasiswa Fakultas Hukum untuk mendiskusikan ini, untuk mendorong penyelesaian kasus ini ya, karena mengingat pemerintah saat ini tidak memiliki keberanian dan keseriusan untuk menyelesaikan persoalan ini. Kalau ini kita biarkan ya kasus-kasus pelanggaran HAM berat tidak akan pernah selesai. Oke. I think Mr. Basil will have another meeting. Unfortunately, we cannot answer all questions, Mr. Basil. But if you don't mind, maybe one more question.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah. You can ask some more questions. It's okay.
We have a question from Saddam Hamzah, male student. Yeah. Based on the state obligation, on the state obligation to resolve gross violation of human rights in line with the standard of international human rights law. And the first is to conduct a proper investigation to open the truth. The second is the state obligate to prosecute and punish the perpetrators. And then the third, the state should provide remedy for the victim. And the last, the state should guarantee that guarantee to the family of victims that the case properly resolved. The last point, the state should guarantee to the family of victims. It's important, Mr. Basil. So based on the presidential decree that we already discussed, number 17, 2022, on the non-judicial settlement for the past abuses. But why the presidential decree not consider the 4 principles that I mentioned previously? So please answer, Mr. Basir, why the presidential decree issued by Mr. Widodo not consider at all the 4 principles that in line with the international human rights law? And then the second question is about the TRC. Considering the name of the TRC, it is very difficult, Mr. Basil. Truth Commission means that whatever done by the commission should be in the right way. So considering the Truth Commission as a name, we expect that the TRC can open up the case properly. But why? In fact, the TRC only established in Aceh? That is the 2-point question that raised by Saddam Hamzah, one of the students, Mr. Basir. Please.
The question about why the Indonesian government has ignored the 4 principles, that is something that I cannot answer. It should be something that be answered by the people from Indonesia who knows the background. But what I can say is that the governments, like your government, don't acknowledge that because they do not want to go through the full process of the reconciliation, because there will be conflicts. There are people and pressures that do not want this to happen, and the government has not taken full control of the situation. If the government has not taken full control of the situation on this issue, then what they will do is a very limited measure. That is what they have done in terms of this non-judicial approach. But how it happened, the details about how it happened in Indonesia is something that you have to look for and ask from your people, your own country people who know more the history. And so that's a historical question. Why it has taken so long, and why it is still at a very, very early stage. This is the same about the other question, but the main thing is this. Unless there is a strong and a well-articulated demand from the people, government will always behave like that. The difference between South African situation was that there was a change of government and the leadership wanted to deal with the problem. Mr. Mandela, the Bishop Tutu, there were that kind of leaders who were able to articulate what the people wanted. And the people had their own movements. The people's movement is what created Mandela. It's not that Mandela created that movement. There was a movement from the people that wanted justice, equality. So why your government is going slow? What I can guess from outside is because internally still your society, that movements are not articulating the problem and getting a strong, while there are very brave people like Mr. Untong and many others who are fighting, but they have not got the support. They have not been given the support by the other people. And make a societal demand for these things. So without that, it never happens. It never comes only from the top.
Okay, I will translate the substance. Ya, saya tidak bisa menjawab ya tadi kenapa keputusan presiden tadi Kepres tidak memuat 4 hal itu. Ini harus ditanyakan kepada orang-orang di negara Anda di Indonesia. Presiden yang jelas presiden tidak mau masuk ke seluruh proses ya rekonsiliasi tadi karena menghindari adanya konflik dan juga pressure atau tekanan dari orang-orang yang di satu sisi mau, di satu sisi tidak mau kasus-kasus tersebut diselesaikan. Masalahnya negara tidak memiliki kontrol penuh atau kekuasaan penuh untuk mengendalikan situasi ini. Maka yang dilakukan ya akhirnya sangat terbatas, hanya sebatas non-judicial proses. Yang terjadi di Indonesia ini Anda harus tanyakan kepada orang-orang di Indonesia yang tahu sejarah ini seperti Pak Untung dan lain-lain tadi ya. Kenapa ini sangat lama diselesaikan? Hal utama adalah Anda harus membangun tuntutan yang kuat dari masyarakat untuk menyelesaikan persoalan tersebut. Misalnya tadi Pak Basil menyebutkan di Afrika Selatan yaitu ada menyelesaikan masalah-masalah korban. Ada gerakan masyarakat yang sangat kuat, masyarakat korban juga untuk mewujudkan keadilan bagi korban. Jadi bukan Nelson Mandela atau Bishop Desmond Tutu yang menggerakkan masyarakat yang menyelesaikan persoalan itu, tapi masyarakat bergerak menjadi dukungan untuk Nelson Mandela dan Desmond Tutu untuk menyelesaikan persoalan tersebut. Jadi pandangan saya secara internal masyarakat Indonesia tidak menyuarakan masalah ini secara kuat. Tidak ada dukungan untuk Pak Bejo Untung dan para korban serta keluarga korban untuk menyelesaikan persoalan ini sehingga masalah ini tidak pernah selesai. Oke, I think that is the second question. Shall we take one more question, Mr. Basil, or enough?
Sure.
One more, ya. It is from Muhammad Yusuf. He said that it is interesting that the tagline from the National Commission on Human Rights on 26 June 2023 in commemorating International Day Against Torture. The sentence stated that altogether we develop world without torture. Stop torture. What is your opinion, Mr. Basil and Mr. Untung, to build the world without torture, whether or not in the perspective of human rights, or in the perspective of human rights, we ignore the perpetrators of torture. It is also part ignoring perpetrators of torture. It is also can be stated that that also part of supporting the perpetrators. So we are ignoring the perpetrators. It is part of crime. Isn't it, Mr. Basil? How to build the world without torture and stop torture, but we are ignoring the perpetrators of torture, whether or not it is part of the crime of torture.
See, in several countries in Asia itself and all the countries in Europe, torture is considered as a heinous crime. and the punishments are prescribed in the criminal law. So, first of all, in Indonesia, you should work towards criminal law, criminalizing torture. Criminalizing torture means recognizing torture as a crime, and then creating an arm for investigation into allegations of torture, and then prosecuting torture cases. Now that is a human rights obligations under the international ICCPR, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Torture and inhuman treatment are serious crimes in any place. And the torture means causing of pain by officer representing the state against anybody, and that is punishable with a serious crime. Punishable means that it should also be investigated. So that is what area that you should develop now. A campaign for criminalizing torture and getting criminal punishment for regarding the torture. It is already in some countries, even in Asia itself. It is difficult because the government very often in our underdeveloped countries depends on the police and the military. So they do not want to see them punished because this is connected also with corruption. So anti-corruption work and the anti-torture work should be combined. So that's shortly is a very big theme. We can have a different, completely discussion entirely on the torture issue one day. But briefly, the thing is that first you must create, recognize the torture as a crime in your country, which I think has not happened yet.
Oke, I will translate, summarize the translate. Di banyak negara ya, torture atau penyiksaan itu adalah kejahatan yang sangat kejam ya, heinous crimes gitu, dan diselesaikan melalui peradilan pidana. Nah, di Indonesia Anda harus memastikan bahwa penyiksaan ini memang dihukum. Artinya mulai dengan memastikan bahwa negara mengakui bahwa penyiksaan itu adalah kejahatan. Dan selanjutnya kita harus memastikan kejahatan penyiksaan itu harus diinvestigasi secara layak dan dituntut di pengadilan. Itu adalah kewajiban negara sebenarnya di bawah Kovenan Hak Sipil dan Politik, bahwa penyiksaan adalah kejahatan yang serius. Di banyak negara penyiksaan itu juga terjadi, dilakukan oleh mereka yang berhubungan dengan negara atau aparat negara terhadap orang, dan ini adalah kejahatan yang sangat bisa dihukum. Ini adalah wilayah yang kita atau Anda sebagai orang Indonesia harus bangun. Ciptakan diskusi, kampanye, sosialisasikan bahwa penyiksaan ini adalah kejahatan yang sangat kejam dan harus dihukum di peradilan pidana. Di banyak negara ini sudah dilakukan, bahkan di beberapa negara Asia ya. Namun ini sulit di negara-negara berkembang karena biasanya pemerintah atau polisi itu enggan untuk mengadili kasus-kasus penyiksaan karena ini ada beberapa kasus yang juga berkaitan dengan korupsi. Maka gerakan anti penyiksaan dan gerakan anti korupsi itu harus berjalan beriringan. Kita harus bisa mendiskusikan persoalan ini secara bersamaan. Kemudian jika itu dilakukan maka akan ada akan menghilangkan kasus penyiksaan itu. Thank you. Oh, I think for
May I add the answer, Mr.
oh yeah,
Please?
please. In English or bahasa Pak Bejo?
Yes, in English. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, please.
Okay. Let me add the explanations. I think the shortages of Indonesian government is until now, Indonesia has not ratified the statute room. Yeah. That is a clause that if the law mechanism doesn't or has no ability to solve the problem in the home affair, the problem of the law cases should be sent or should be tried by the International Criminal Court. Yeah. And nowadays, Indonesian government has not ratified yet. And this is the difficulty ones. That is why I think this is the duty of the young generations in the future to ratify the statute room. Yeah, it is very important because it is burned after the World War. Yeah, in order to make the democracy and the human rights cases in the world. This is the first one. And the second one is this one.
I translate first, Mr. Basil.
Okay,
Mr.
please.
Bejo.
Yes.
Jadi poinnya Pak Bejo ini tentang Statuta Roma ya, Pengadilan Pidana Internasional, yang waktu itu bahannya sempat saya berikan. Indonesia belum menjadi pihak, belum mau meratifikasi itu, sehingga tidak ada alternatif penyelesaian persoalan-persoalan pelanggaran HAM berat ini di Mahkamah Pidana Internasional. Kemudian ini juga tugas kita, tugas Anda sebagai mahasiswa generasi muda untuk mendesak, mendorong, mengkampanyekan agar negara mau meratifikasi Statuta Roma. Please continue, Mr. Basil. Mr. Bejo.
Yeah, there is still so many regulations in Indonesia. Just this is only the camouflage. You see that the case of Timor-Leste, actually Indonesia at that time would like to be trial in the international court, yeah. But because let us say the knowledge, let us say the idea of Indonesian government to set up the human rights court in Indonesia, so now Indonesia at the time free of trial of the international. So what I said that Indonesia is actually has a trick, yeah, to manipulate as if there is a court in Indonesia, but really there is no human rights court. Now the fact that there is no perpetrators that is sentenced to the jail. Yeah, this is a matter of fact with the Timor-Leste case and then Tanjung Priok, yeah, and Abe Pura, just the new one, yeah. So and then the most important one, the statement of Mr. Mahfud MD, that is very difficult, yeah. And the government also has no courage to say sorry to the victim. It is a signal that actually the government has no ability and no capacity to open up the legal process. Please.
Oh, jadi tadi Pak Bejo menyampaikan ya ada beberapa kasus yang pernah terjadi, ada kasus tim Abe Pura, meskipun itu pernah dibawa ke pengadilan, tapi Indonesia ini punya trik ya, pengadilannya ada, dasar hukumnya ada, tapi tidak mampu menyelesaikan kasus-kasus pelanggaran HAM tersebut. Bahkan apa yang disampaikan oleh Pak Mahfud MD ya, itu tadi disampaikan Pak Bejo, sangat sulit pernyataan tersebut. Pemerintah tidak menunjukkan itikat baik ya untuk meminta maaf untuk public apology kepada korban, dan ini adalah sinyal bahwa negara tidak serius.
Then this is also very important. Now my questions. Indonesia, based on the 5 principles, and the most important is about the law enforcement. Yeah, the law enforcement should be built up in Indonesia. This is the main point of the what's called Pancasila. But reality, there is no law enforcement. So my questions, yeah, what is the use of the everything should be fulfilled by the law, but in fact the government has no courage. Yeah, so I think talking about the law enforcement, the government should not have a full courage. Yeah, this is very important. Don't say about because if it is always be repeated again and again, so Indonesia now was built up by the what's called hawks. Yeah, you see in the 1965. Yeah, so as if the Indonesian Communist Party make a rebellions, but actually no, there is no rebellions. Yeah, and then what's called the 11 March of decree by President Sukarno. Yeah, that's also wrong. Yeah, so and then the most important one, Indonesia nowadays was built up by the many killings, many hoax. That is why it is time for the young generations to open up and then to say, let's review our history and make Indonesia based on the law enforcement. Thank you.
Oke, Indonesia berdasarkan 5 principle atau 5 sila ya dalam Pancasila itu, kan tegas atau jelas dalam konstitusi juga dinyatakan negara kita adalah negara hukum. Maka supremasi hukum harus ditegakkan di Indonesia. Tapi kenyataannya tidak ada penegakan hukum. Faktanya negara tidak punya itikat baik untuk menyelesaikan kasus-kasus yang terjadi, yaitu kasus pelanggaran HAM berat. Maka kita harus memastikan negara punya keseriusan. Indonesia ini banyak diselimuti hoax ya. Misalnya tadi Pak Bejo menyampaikan dalam peristiwa 65 itu adalah pemberontakan PKI misalnya. Kemudian Super Semar itu adalah pemberian kekuasaan dan lain-lain yang nyatanya itu belum teruji kebenarannya. Ya, faktanya ya yang terjadi adalah pembantaian, pembunuhan, ya, kriminalisasi dan lain sebagainya. Nah, ini tugas Anda, tugas kita sebagai mahasiswa hukum untuk meminta negara membuka, meluruskan sejarah dan mengungkapkan kebenaran yang sebenar-benarnya. Okay, last comment from Mr. Basil, maybe, please.
Yeah. So I think it is very important as young people, as Mr. Untong has also been saying, you should be more active than the earlier generation because, you know, because of the military pressures and so many things, no big debate has come up in Indonesia on the whole issue of legal accountability, the law, enforcement of the law. Actually, what is the real power of courts? How independent are your court system? So all these are matters of very vital for the future of Indonesia. So I hope that you will deepen this discussion. It's a good discussion. There a lot of points came up, and Mr. Untong also raised very vital questions. So I hope you can continue, and we will be very happy to participate more in discussing these issues, because these are also issues that have been discussed in other countries in Asia. Because we have come to a point where we have a lot of problems about the nature of rule of law and democracy in these countries. So I wish you a good future and hope you will continue with this discussion.
Okay, I will translate first. Ya, generasi muda ya, seperti disampaikan Pak Basil itu harus aktif, harus berpartisipasi aktif karena negara Anda di masa lalu juga pernah mengalami adanya pressure misalnya dari militer, dari rezim dan lain-lain. Dan di Indonesia saat ini saya melihatnya belum ada diskurs atau diskusi atau perdebatan yang masif, yang kuat tentang memperkuat akuntabilitas hukum, memperkuat supremasi hukum, penegakan hukum, dan kemudian mendiskusikan bagaimana membangun independensi peradilan secara masif. Ini adalah masalah untuk masa depan Indonesia. Dan Anda sebagai mahasiswa hukum harus mendiskusikan masalah ini lebih dalam di ruang-ruang diskusi. Tadi kita juga mendapatkan banyak informasi dari Mr. Bejo Untung, masalah penting tentang pelanggaran HAM, dan semoga saya juga berharap Anda bisa berpartisipasi dalam banyak diskusi ke depannya. Kita juga mendiskusikan ini di banyak negara di Asia tentang penegakan hukum, rule of law, dan lain sebagainya. Dari Pak Basil menyampaikan terima kasih dan sampai jumpa di diskusi-diskusi berikutnya. Oke, Mr. Basil, I think because now Friday, Mr. Basil also have another meeting, And in Indonesia, we gonna have a mass pray in the mosque at 12. So on behalf of the participants, on behalf of the students, so I would like to say thank you very much. Hopefully in the future we can discuss further on different topics, but still on the frame of human rights, national and also international human rights. It is very useful for the student, Mr. Basil, for their reference.
Yeah.
Of course, in Indonesia, one of the problem is the language, because English is not mandatory. So and they are shy to speak English, but actually they can speak English, of course. So thank you very much. See you in the next occasion. All the best for you, Mr. Basil,
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Untung, and all of you. Maybe we can take a picture. Open the camera first. All Mr. Namal can help to take a picture, yeah. Namal maybe can help us to take a picture. Yeah, we can take side by side, yeah. Open the camera, maybe. Okay. Are you done, Namal? Okay. So thank you very much, all participants. See you in the next discussions. Thank you, Mr. Basil. Thank you, Mr. Untung.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, say hello to all friends in.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Pak Daryono Gareng.
Thank you, Pak. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Mr. Bejo.
Mr. Basil, yes. Mr. Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye, all the students.
Bye-bye.
Ya, bye-bye.
Terima kasih ya semuanya. Sampai ketemu lagi berikutnya nanti untuk kisi-kisi kuliahnya. Terima kasih. Izin live ya.
Terima kasih Pak, izin live.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak.
Terima kasih
Pak. Terima kasih Bapak dosen.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ikil. Sudah mohon pamit ya, amat beraktivitas.